Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soul Stained Ink. My name is Beth, and I am here today to present to you a brief, I hope, biography of Joseph Rudyard Kipling. Now, Rudyard Kipling is the author of our Classic Children's Literature Book Club book pick for May, otherwise known as Middle Grade Mayhem. And that pick was The Jungle Book, the first Jungle Book, just the first one, not the short stories, not the second edition. Um, but I wanted to come on here. I like to give you a brief, usually, biography of the author to kind of let you know a little bit about why he might have written the book or why some things might have come across as they did in the text. It's something I do with my students, and I like to do it here as well. I find it helps me and hopefully the viewers and people who read along with me as well. Now, he was born in Bombay, now known as Mumbai, in 1865. Yes, December 30th, 1865. And he lived there for the first 6 years of his life. His father was an artist and a historian, and he ended up being the kind of caretaker of a museum. And in some things that Rudyard wrote later on, he talks about this museum as being like this fantastic magical place. He very much was enthralled with native Indians, their life, how they acted, reacted, the things that they did, their culture, etc. But when he was 6, his parents moved him from India back to England, to their home, and he ended up being in a foster care sort of situation for about 5 years, and apparently it was not great. From there, he ended up going to a boarding school, which was also not great. And he's written stories about these things, stories and poems. So he ended up going to his father was the curator at Lahore Museum, by the way. And in the first chapter of Kim, which is Rudyard's most famous, I believe, adult novel. I haven't read it and honestly had not heard of it previously, but that's fine. He describes his father's job as to preside over this wonder house. So obviously, he really dug it. His mother was Alice MacDonald, and she had 3 sisters, one of whom married Sir Edward Burney Jones, and another one married Sir Edward Poynter, and then the third married Alfred Baldwin, and she was the mother of Stanley Baldwin, who later became a prime minister. These were very good, lifelong, important connections for Rudyard Kipling. But anyway, when his parents took him to England at the age of 6, he was left at a foster home at Southsea, the horrors of which he described in his short story Baa Black Sheep, which he published in 1888. Then he went to the United Services College at Westward Ho in North Devon, which was new and inexpensive, and quite frankly, an inferior boarding school. But he celebrated this place in Stalky and Co., which was published in 1899, and then there were a few related stories. And basically, he said it was an unruly paradise in which the highest goals of English education are met amid a tumult of teasing, bullying, and beating. And this has become known as one of his greatest imaginative achievements because you can really feel what the characters are going through and dealing with during that time. In 1882, he went back to India and worked as a journalist there for 7 years. His parents were not like officially important, but they did belong to the highest Anglo-Indian society. And so Rudyard got to take advantage of a lot of opportunities that might not have been afforded to him otherwise. He kind of got to experience the full range of what someone might experience there. And he also loved what he called the spectacle of native India. And so while he was there, his affection and curiosity for it just grew, and he filled up journals. He filled up the journals he worked for, as well as his own personal notebooks with prose sketches, light verses, etc. Published departmental ditties in 1886, and then a short story collection, Plain Tales from the Hills, in 1888. And also in 1887 through 1889, he brought out 6 paper covered volumes of short stories, um, which were things like The Phantom Rickshaw, containing the man who would be king, Wee Willie Winkie, which had the story of Baa Baa Black Sheep, etc. He returned to England in 1889, and within a year he was acclaimed as one of the most brilliant prose writers. And then he published a book of verse, and everybody was like, losing their minds. He became the most famous. When Alfred Lord Tennyson passed away, he was the poet laureate. Basically, Tennyson passed away, and everyone was like, oh my goodness, Kipling is the new Tennyson. So everybody loved him. And in 1892, the same year that Tennyson passed away, Kipling married Caroline Balestier, who was the sister of an American publisher, Walcott Balestier, and a writer. He had collaborated with them on the Nahulaka, I think, Nahulaka, something like that, which was a very unsuccessful romance novel. And then that year, the couple also moved to the United States. Mrs. Kipling owned a property in Vermont. They settled there. However, they did not get along well with their neighbors. Everyone around them said they were objectionable and uncouth and just terrible. And the Kiplings moved home to England about 4 years later. They could not stay. They could not come to terms with being in America. They had to go home to England. And after that, Kipling was like, Americans are foreigners, and they are almost a lesser breed. Like, them and the French, they're not quite a lesser breed, but they're kind of a lesser breed. And like, no, we need to civilize them because they were born beyond the English Channel, and they are just lesser. He wrote several amazing stories. The issue with his writing is that he has these great ideas and he writes these amazing little vignettes. However, they don't always come together as well balanced novels. One of the most popular examples of this is looking at The Jungle Book. He wrote The Jungle Book and the second Jungle Book, and there's a series of short stories that he wrote about kind of that area, not necessarily the characters, but that area. And they have put them together. So we have the first Jungle Book, the series of short stories, and the second Jungle Book. And even if you read them separately like they're supposed to be, the short stories work really well. The novels seem to be little snippets of short stories, and you don't always get like a cohesive feel to the novel. But he has this amazing, beautifully lyrical prose style, and his poetry, again, amazing, beautifully lyrical. He is fabulous, and that's why he became the first Englishman to get the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1907. But he's still not quite cohesive in the way he did things. And by the time he passed away in 1936, January of 1936, he had kind of fallen off the map. Not only did his love of imperialism stay, he was friends with Mr. Rhodes, who was a South African diamond magnate. He got a house from him. He spent a lot of time in South Africa as he grew older, and he was just trying to civilize everyone. He thought imperialism was the deal. And to be fair, India was under imperial control until 1947. So he passed away a decade before imperialism went away. But it wasn't really vibing with everyone else because we had gone through so much as a world. There's World War I. a lot of skirmishes, uh, a lot of political things going on, and giant, massive changes in the world in general. Just the 20s and 30s, where all of the technological advances were changing, rearranging everything going on. And then he's still over here preaching about imperialism and trying to civilize people. Didn't really work out very well. And so when he passed away, it was without the fanfare that one would expect from a man whose existence had been touted as being that of one of the greatest prose and poetry authors of all time, just 20 years earlier. However, that's what happened. When you read his books, you can tell he loved imperialism. He loved India. You can really feel his love for native India, but also his belief that they needed to be civilized more, right? Like, I love it. They're amazing, but we should civilize them. And as long as you understand that that's kind of almost a trauma response on his part, because he lived there and it was beautiful and it was amazing. And then he went and had a lot of traumatic experiences as a child and teenager. And then he went back and it was better when he went back. And so, if I civilize them and make it better, maybe it was worth it. I don't know. That is my uneducated opinion on that. But he definitely loved India. He was an amazing author. And when you read it, just understand that it's slightly problematic, but he obviously loved the characters, the area that he was talking about. He just wanted it to be better. And in his mind, that is what would have been better for it. Do I agree with him? No. But I love the way that he wrote. I do think that he probably would have mostly fallen off the face of the planet if Disney had not done the Jungle Book movie and we had the other live actions come out later. But that's okay. I enjoy the movies and I enjoyed the book. And I hope that you guys have read it or will read it before the end of May and join our discussion on whether or not it is actually written for a middle grade audience by today's standards. I will talk to you guys again soon. Until next time, stay safe out there. Bye.